Can you do coding on a Steam Deck? That's the question I'm trying to answer in this video. The Steam Deck has just recently been on sale, so I got mine for super cheap. I had it for about 5 days now, and I had some time to play around with it for a bit, and I just want to talk about what I learned. About the different models. So I got the 512 model because it had the biggest price drop. It's normal price now, but it was like 369 euros when I bought it. So I think that was a really good deal. Unfortunately, it's not on sale anymore, and it's even out of stock. You can get the 64GB model for a still reasonable price, buy a SSD separately, and swap it out. There are guys on YouTube on how to do that. So yeah, you might be wondering if you should get the OLED model instead. If you know you are gonna use it a lot and you don't mind spending a bit of extra money on it, yeah, sure, go ahead, get the OLED model. The screen, from all I heard, is a lot nicer, and battery life helps a lot. It's about 50% more battery life, and I can tell you, the Steam Deck drains power really fast when you use it as just a handheld gaming device. So if that's your use case, go get the more expensive model. I wasn't sure on how much I would actually use my Steam Deck, so I just got the biggest option, the cheapest option, and then I figured if I end up using it a lot, I could probably resell it and then get the OLED model later on. Just the cheapest 64GB model is probably gonna be way too less disk storage if you're actually gonna use it for anything. So if you get that model, you should also buy a separate SSD and swap it out in it. The Steam Deck is of course meant for gaming, but you can switch it to desktop mode, and then you just have a stock or pretty basic KDE desktop. So yeah, you could use that for all your everyday computer needs. But I wanted to see if I can actually do development on it. For just your normal everyday stuff, there's this Discovery app, and you can install pretty much everything you would need for day-to-day use. So popular apps, it already comes pre-installed with Firefox. You can get your Spotify. I use Tidal instead. That was also easily installable from here. And you can probably get your Discord or whatever you otherwise do, photo editing and other stuff. I'm recording this with OBS, which is also available from the Discover app. You see here. So you can do a lot of stuff already, but if you are into development, then you need to be able to do a bit more advanced stuff. The way the Discover app works is that it installs FlatHub packages or Flatpak packages from a repository called FlatHub. So these are applications bundled with the libraries and sort of like a sandbox containerized application. They integrate fairly well, but they're still sandbox, so wouldn't work for all thing development related. We need something where we can install our own libraries, set up development tools, and have that work together. The Steam Deck ships with an OS called SteamOS, which is based on Arch Linux. I run Arch as my daily Linux distribution, so I found that to be really cool. Though there's one problem with its Arch Linux. It is that the root file system is read-only by default. You can toggle it off so you can actually write to it. Just disable read-only mode, and then you can set up your Pacman and you can do all your normal Arch stuff. The problem with that is every time that you get OS updates, then it will overwrite the root file system and you lose all the stuff you've installed. So how do we deal with that? Well, luckily it also comes with something called DistroBox. It actually comes with two container sort of solutions, Podman and DistroBox. So as far as I could read, DistroBox uses Podman under the hood, Podman is sort of like similar to Docker. So with DistroBox, you can spin up in a container with whatever other Linux distribution you like, and then you can run a bunch of stuff within that container. And within the container, you have full root access, and you can write to its virtual root file system, which lives somewhere in the subfolder of your home folder. So you can install all packages on that. So that's really neat. In the Discover app, I found something called BoxBuddy, which is a graphical front end for DistroBox. So it makes it really, here you can see it, it makes it really easy to configure containers with DistroBox. It's written in GNOME tooling, so it uses GTK and it's themed like GNOME apps, so it looks a bit odd on this KDE desktop. Whatever is totally usable. So you go ahead and add and select the distribution you want. I use Arch, so that's what I selected, and then you get a choice here of init system. I just left it off. I don't know, maybe I would stumble upon something that I would actually need it for later on, but I don't know. I haven't really stopped me. It haven't really stopped me for now. So I created one with Arch, and then you can click Open Terminal, and then I get the terminal within the Arch. I already done a bunch of customization on it, so your terminal prompt will look pretty basic, will just be the default bash that it comes with. You can also get inside your container by typing DistroBox, enter, and then the name of the container. In my case it's Arch, and you enter, and now you are working within the container. So you can open that get to it from terminal instead of using the BoxBuddy front end. You can see what other stuff you can do with DistroBox just by typing in DistroBox and then tab, and it shows you all the various subcommands. These subcommands all have a hyphen in it, but you could also replace it with a space instead. So entering like this, and that will work the same. Within the container, you got full access to your normal package manager, so I can install just about anything I would ever need. I tend to do a lot of my work in the command line, so I don't really need that much GUI stuff to have a development environment. But there's one sort of tweak I need to do to the host operating system, to SteamOS directly. So if you see, I have a bunch of icons in my command line prompt. This is power level 9K or 10K, by the way, if you're curious. There's also a couple of other applications I use. I use NeoVim a lot. And it also has a bunch of icons that it uses. And then I sometimes use Yassi for navigating between files. And it also have icons. Oh yeah, by the way, I sort of replaced the ls with something called ESA that shows icons. With command line parameters, it can be configured to show icons as well. So I like having these icons. So these icons are displayed as a font. So I basically need, because console is running directly in SteamOS and not in the container, then I need these fonts to be available in console so I can use them. The icons comes from something called NerdFonts. So basically I need to install NerdFonts directly on SteamOS in order to be able to use those icons in the default console application. So as I said, the root file system in SteamOS is going to be overwritten each time there is an update. So I basically make this small script to disable read-only mode and then initialize the Pacman keychain so I can install packages from Pacman, and then I'm installing the NerdFonts, and then I'm enabling read-only mode again, so I don't accidentally make any changes to my host operating system. I put all this in a script, so each time there's an update to Steam Linux, I would kind of have to rerun this script. I don't know if it's a perfect solution, but it's sort of like doable workaround for this stuff. Then after I've done that, I can do pretty much all my work inside just inside the container. I configured my console application with an extra profile that just opens up a shell within the container. To do that, we go into the settings and configure console, and then under profile, we see here I have my arts profile. So I do DistroBox enter the name of the console -- and then the command to execute within, which is gonna be the command for your shell. I use C shell, so it lives in this path. Yours might be something like /bin bash if you're using bash instead. You can even set it as the default profile. Then that way, whenever you open up your console, you're just being taken directly into your container. So if you don't use the SteamOS commands a lot on your host SteamOS, but everything you do in your container, then this might be useful. I experimented a bit with the beta channel, and that broke this DistroBox. So I don't know if it's gonna be 100% reliable into the future. For now, it seems to be working for me. So when I was experimenting with the beta channel, it broke my DistroBox, and because I had it set up to default to load the container, it would just like pop up the window. It wouldn't be able to run the command in the container, whatever, so it would just close again. So I couldn't actually get to the terminal. In order to fix that, I navigated to config folder, and then I searched for console, found I guess this is the configuration file for console. If you open it up in text editor such as Kate, we see here default profile. Now I set it to arts, so you just replace that with whatever it was before. By default, the profile for console is called Waver. I don't know why. So yeah, I happened to fix it by changing it here. So I revert back to stable channel instead of beta channel for SteamOS, just so I could keep using DistroBox. Anyway, that's just a small trick I found out. Now that you have your container in DistroBox, to be actually able to do work in it, you need to install the command line tools and all the stuff you normally use. The first thing I did was install Yay as pack manager, which is basically just a wrapper around Pacman that can also install from the Arch user repository. And I think that's the real power of Arch Linux, the user repository. So being able to install from that really easily is super great. I got a separate video where I set up most of my command line stuff, but here's basically what I would do to install. So I got all my normal utility. I use S8, and I got my NeoVim, a bit of stuff for ease of navigating around. Selly, I don't know, I'm thinking about, it's a terminal multiplex, I'm thinking about switching that to Tmux. I got my LazyGit for doing all my Git stuff, and Bat as a replacement for Cat, and Esa as I showed for listing files. Then I set up my C Shell, a popular plugin system for C Shell, and I installed power level 10k, which is what gives me this awesome prompt here. I found that a lot of commands are run within DistroBox, within my Arch container in DistroBox. They spew out a bunch of warnings about local not being configured. So this might be very specific to just if you're running Arch within DistroBox, but I just want to show you. If I get etc local, this wasn't by default, so I configured my length here to in US and my LC time. Before we do that, we should probably go ahead and enable those two locals. You could do that in the etc local gen file. So basically you just outcomment the locals that you intend to use. For instance, I got in DK and in US because I want ISO for time format, and then I want the rest of the language to be English US. After you change local gen, you need to run the command local gen to actually generate new locals for what you specified. Then place environment variables or variables that sets the local in sclocalconf. If you use same format for everything, you can just specify the length. But I want to override time, so I had isotime. Last, I found that I also had to install glibc locals for the locals to work. For development, as I said, I mostly just use the command line tools for most of my development stuff. I've been a Vim user for a really long time, but these days most people are switching over to a fork of Vim called NeoVim, which has a bunch of cool LSP stuff, so you can get your language servers running and all sorts of neat stuff. NeoVim can be a lot of work to set up by hand. I'm lazy, so I use LazyVim, which is a distribution on top of NeoVim that just ships with a really easy way to install a bunch of common plugins. So if you already are used to Vim key bindings, then LazyVim is really easy to learn. So yeah, I just installed LazyVim, NeoVim and LazyVim like I would normally do. Do a check health to see what extra stuff I need to install. And then I got my whole development environment working. You see I got a sample project here with some TypeScript React stuff for frontend and some .NET stuff for backend. So I can navigate around in the code and do normal code editing. I got my NeoVim stuff running, and then next up is I like to run my database in a container, so next up would be to get that working. There's a tool called Podman, which serves a similar purpose as Docker, and is in many ways sort of like a replacement for Docker, can be used as a pretty direct replacement for Docker. It's already installed on SteamOS, the host operating system itself, and is actually what DistroBox uses. So in order to be able to work with Podman within the container, I found the easiest just to use the Podman on my host operating system. So I'm basically making a symbolic link for user local bin Podman to execute the command on the host operating system. So DistroBox provides this an executable for actually calling out to your host operating system. So just simply link those together. Right. To make it work, I first installed Podman, then did the symlink, and then afterwards I installed Podman Compose, which does pretty much the same as Docker Compose and can even work with Docker Compose files. It allows me to spin up containers from a Docker Compose file, though initially I had to do a small modification to the image source. Basically because by default Docker Compose is configured to load stuff from Docker Hub or Docker IO. That's not the default in Podman, so you could just add Docker IO, add the name of the registry in front of your image name, and then that will make it work. So if I do a Podman Compose up, we should hopefully see that it's running the containers. Do Podman PS, we can see I got a Postgres and Mailcatcher running, which is the containers I have specified in my Docker Compose file. So yeah, this is pretty cool. I can sort of get all my Docker stuff running now. It's really annoying to have to go change your Docker Compose files just to be able to run them in Podman. So what you can do is to tell Podman some default registries to look for images. So if you edit your /se/container/registries file and then find unqualified search registries, then you can add in docker.io library and then docker.io as default registries. That way you don't have to specify docker.io for the image path in your Docker Compose file. So you can just have the images like you would normally do with Docker. And then you can run Podman Compose up and it downloads and spins up the images. You see here I got them running. That's about all I need to do to be able to do my current development stuff on SteamOS. So I got a sample application here loaded. I got my editor, and I got the front end and back end running here, database with Podman, and it all sort of works without having to do too much. That's really cool. This is just about as far as I got into doing development on SteamOS yet. There's still some more stuff I would like to do. I would like to get XDG open working, so all my command line tools, if they want to open something in the web browser or in a PDF reader or something, it would just work. I'm thinking about just writing a small script that will look at the input and then calling back to the host and launch the appropriate application, but I haven't gotten so far yet. So yeah, the only real caveat I found is that I need to install Node fonts in order to get my icons working directly on SteamOS, and then I do pretty much everything else within the DistroBox container that I set up. And that seems to be working okay so far. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I could probably right now survive only with the Steam Deck. If I only had one computer, I could probably do everything I need to do only with the Steam Deck. So I think that's pretty cool, especially for a computer that was under 400 euros. That's really, really nice.